Marketer of the Day, episode 590, Family, Fitness, Finances, and Friendships, the American Dream Realized Through Hard Work, Positive Beliefs, Sacrifices, and Focus, with Hayk Tadevosyan.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We're chatting with Hayk Tadevosyan, and he is going to tell us all about mind control. He has a new book that's coming out called Mind Control, 14 Principles of Achieving the American Dream, the manual to why most successful people feel unfulfilled and what to do about it. I think that we can all relate to that in some respect, right? Some of us are more or less fulfilled than others, but either way, it's always good to have the information up our game. So, hi, glad to be talking to you today.
Likewise, Robert. Thank you. Appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm definitely excited to share some things about the book.
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear about it because I think that we'd all love to have those superpowers and be able to get what we want and without being too much of a jerk, and also be aware of maybe some of the behaviors, the habits that other people have, and also we might even want to have that awareness of some of the things that we might be giving off if people don't like us, or if we rub people the wrong way, or if we want to be liked, or just be more persuasive, or a better influencer, or a better communicator. So yeah, this is all a very interesting topic for me. So can you tell me about, just to get us to jump off here, what kind of problem is your book solving? Where are people stuck and how are you helping them out with that?
You know, the book was actually pure accident. It started off as a diary of me trying to make sense out of things that I was working on. Because, 16 years ago, Robert, I moved to the United States, and this was kind of the American dream, right? And, my father and I, he got a visa, him plus one. That meant we had to leave my mother, my brother, and my sister behind. I have a younger brother who's 5 years younger than me, Albert, and Ripsy, my sister, who's 2 years older, and of course my mom. So initially we came to America because we were taught that this country is going to solve a lot of your problems. And one of the biggest problems, us coming from third world country, is coming over here and making money, right? Because where I came from, there was no running water. We lived in a 16-story project building. And the poorer you are, the higher up on the building you live. It's the opposite in America, right? You got the penthouse on the top floor. Well, in Armenia, it was the other way around, because there's no working elevator, no electricity. We would maybe get 2-3 hours of electricity per day so we can make food. Running water, we did not have pumps that were strong enough to pump water to the 16th floor. So I remember running downstairs and carrying water upstairs in buckets for my mother to be able to make soup or even shower water. So initially, knowing the fact that we can come to this country would bring happiness, right? Solve a problem. And so when we initially moved, just my father and I remember, I came to the country and I felt really empty, and we were poor. We were living from people's couches to couches, low housings. Point my father was in a car. I remember the only food he had is when I was coming back home from middle school, I would skip breakfast. I would keep some of the food from school to bring back to my father to eat. So initially, we worked on a thing called insecurity, right? So, and I remember when I started writing about the book, I did not know it was going to talk about solving people's problems. Essentially, I talk about fulfillment, right, in the book itself. And my analogy in the book is we start working on what we're lacking the most as far as insecurity. So if some people are overweight, of course, the only thing they think will bring them happiness is the weight loss. Some people who are very poor, the only thing they think will bring them happiness is money. Some people who lack relationships, they think if they bring relationship into their life, it will solve their problems. They'll be happy. Well, what I learned, every time I, forcefully, or this perception of me thinking I'll solve the immediate problem that I'm insecure about would bring me satisfaction and happiness. And it taught me I was very wrong. Because, as you can imagine, coming to this country with nothing, and I worked my butt off to solve the money issue. And I did. In my early 20s, became one of the youngest reps for the company I'm working with. I own an agency now with full staff. And I remember making my first six figures when I was 22 years old, to the point where I'm like, wow, I just solved the issue. Money had always been around in my family, right? So why am I so feeling empty? Why am I so unfulfilled? I went out and bought myself a fancy car, and it was pretty much an exotic with all, I did all the upgrades possible, thinking I'm just trying to fill up a room, an empty space I had in my heart, right? I was trying to fill it up with material. And I realized money did not bring me satisfaction. It brought me just temporary happiness. So, and what happens when temporary happiness goes away and you've made a bunch of commitments to toys and people and, parties and things like that? Well, you're left with a thing called regret. And I noticed money was just bringing in more regret because I was trying to fill in this empty heart in my room with material. So at that point, I realized, I had sacrificed my time with friends. I had sacrificed my time with fitness. I had sacrificed my time with a partner. I was a single young guy with nothing else going on but myself with my career and money. So I said, you know what? I kind of miss hanging out with my friends. So I'm going to start taking some lunch breaks. These 12, 14-hour work days are just not going to do it for me. So I started working on my next insecurity, which was lack of friendship. I remember, Robert, I read this story one time. It was about a college professor. You probably heard the story before. He kind of comes up to his students and he pulls up two empty jars on the table and says, hey, these represent your life. And he fills up both jars to the rim with golf balls. And he asks his students, how many of you think now these jars are full? And of course, everybody raises their hand. And then he takes pebbles and he throws the pebbles, which fill up the space between the golf balls. And he's like, okay, is it full now? So the students start cracking up. They're like, yeah, it's full. And then he pulls out sand and he pulls sand, which fills up the space in between the golf balls and the pebbles. And he's like, okay, is it full now? And everybody's cracking up. And then he grabs two beers and he pours the two beers inside these two jars. And of course, there's room for the beer as well. And he's like, what I'm trying to illustrate with this example to you, my students, is these jars are your life. They're always going to be full of something. You can put a definition to these things. The golf balls could be, your career problems and issues and things you think are just making you really busy. The pebbles could be, maybe relatives and friends issues and stuff like that. The sand can be maybe your health, give or take. He goes, what I'm trying to explain with these two jars as an analogy is the fact that no matter how busy you think you are, you should always make time and you will always have time for 2 beers with your friends. I remember after I actually read that story, I realized I missed spending time with my friends. So I started taking lunch breaks. I hired better employees, a manager. I started taking lunches with my friends and peers. I started getting off work early. I implemented some schedule to work out because I'd actually gotten out of shape. I went back, I started doing marathon running, training. I got back into really, really good shape to the point where I was doing like a 5-minute mile. I could do a full marathon, no problem. Weightlifting was great. But also, and I was spending a lot of time with my friends, but something was missing. And that was around the time I had a girlfriend, which I ended up proposing to marrying, and now we have 2 beautiful kids, David and Armand. They're 2 and 4. And once I actually line up those 4 pillars in my life, and I call them the 4 F's in my book: the family, the fitness, the finances, and the friendships, I realized I'm more fulfilled now than when I had more money, or when I had just health, or when I had just friends, or when I had just a relationship. And I'm not the richest person I know, Robert. I'm not the healthiest person I know. I don't have the biggest family. I don't have the most amount of friends. But I realized my fulfillment came into my life when I learned to balance those 4 things. And I think fulfillment equals to a 100% formula only if you break it down to 25% each. So 25% of what you and how you spend your efforts and time should be your family, 25% should be your career, 25% should be your health, and 25% should be your friends. And every time, I pulled one of those things out, it felt off. I was not fulfilled. I was not happy. I was not motivated. And this is probably the happiest and the most motivated I've been after I had my first child 4 years ago. That's when I really realized success is not about the money. It's not about the physique. It's not about social life or just family. Because like it or not, yes, family brings fulfillment and happiness, but how would you feel knowing you can't support them, right? And how would you feel knowing you have all the money in the world, but you're extremely unhealthy? Because I have seen guys in Ferraris and Lamborghinis who can barely fit because their belly's rubbing up against the steering wheel. So that got me to sit down and write this book. It was more of a diary for me than anything else, and it turned into 300 pages. So I went to an editor. I went to 2 different editors, a structural editor, and also went to a line editor. They both looked at it, so I finished up with the 250-page manuscript. And one of my buddies actually had published a book called Lifestyle Business Owner. He owns multiple businesses in the area. And he referred me to Morgan James, a book publisher. And this is a funny thing, Robert, actually. My goal was for my 31st birthday to go live with my book, and I did not. But on my birthday, I had sent the copy of my manuscript to the publisher. And these publishers, they get about 5,000, 6,000 books a year. They only approve like 100 to 150 books. So only like 2-3% of them get approved. So I had no hope of them approving me because I'm a nobody. I never wrote a book. I'm not famous, right? I'm not a celebrity's cousin. So on my birthday, I get a voicemail from the editing company, the publishing company, saying, hey, we looked at your manuscript. We accept it. The board likes it. We are looking forward to working with you. So So far, it's not out yet. But it really made me feel good about the fact that the book is going to be published by a good publishing company. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Well, quite a journey, and you made it. And there's so much good stuff to unpack in there. But I just want to recap for people listening those 4 F's, those 4 pillars, which are so important: the family, fitness, finances, and friendships. And you're so right that it's easy if we're not aware of some of these things to become too lopsided, or even not only that, but to not give these 4 pillars the dedication and the persistence and the time and the effort and the repetition that those things deserve. And it sounds like you're a really dedicated guy. Like you made your family stuff work, you made your fitness stuff work, you made your business stuff work. And a lot of people out there are probably buying book after book on how to get in shape, on how to run a marathon, on how to diet, and not really sticking to things until the end there. And what's also great about the way that you laid out some of these things is that, it's easy to look back in hindsight, but it sounds like you're really good at simplifying these things and putting them into really black and white terms. Like a lot of people out there have that dream of building a business, but then they say, oh, I need to have these 200 things in place before I even get started. Or a lot of people want to lose weight or get in better shape, but they say, well, I've got to have a workout schedule, I've got to go to the gym, and they put all these obstacles in front of themselves. And it's really great that those 4 F's, those 4 pillars, don't include watching TV, don't include checking the phone or checking Facebook to see how I measure up to other people. So and then also it sounds like you have a lot of this awareness, this course correction, this realizing when things aren't working, because like you said, you had those friends who had that same level of financial success as you, if not more, but then they just kind of kept on going with that, and they didn't realize that, well, there's more to life than just money, and they're kind of caught in that feedback loop, that cycle that you mentioned of, being unfulfilled, thinking that if only I bought this thing, or if only I did this one thing, then suddenly I would get happiness, and then they get maybe a little step closer to happiness, but not all the way there. And they say, oh, what's even the point? And then they have that regret and fall down even worse, and then get back on the cycle, back on that train. So it's really great that you discovered these 4 F's, these 4 pillars, and it's also great that you were able to stick through things of saying, well, I'll stick to it enough to write the book and then go get it edited and go get it published. So do you have any secrets or any tips or pointers to that whole aspect of kind of sticking through and persisting through things, maybe even after the point where you think it's not going to work?
Robert, so on the surface, it sounds simple and easy, right? Oh, the guy came to America, he worked hard, he makes good money, he looks like he's in good shape, and he's got a decent family, and the guy has, looks like money, and he figured out he wanted to write a book, he wrote a book, right? One thing that, I kind of share in the book is the silver bullet and the secret to anything that you make it work is nothing substitutes good old-fashioned hard work. In business too, a lot of people call me and ask me, a lot of newbies tend to reach out to me and say, hey, what's your secret? How did you make your business work? How do you have all the freedom and money in one? Because a lot of times people either have one or the other. You either have a lot of time, which you invest into a startup or a business, and you convert your time into money. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of money but no free time. They're working 18, 19 hours a day. Well, my goal is to figure out both. Now, in order to figure out both, like it or not, you have to make sacrifices. At the very beginning, to figure out money, I sacrificed the other 3 F's. I had to. And that's why it took me 2.5 years to write this book. And Robert, as I was writing my book, and I edited the book like probably, 10 times, to the point where my mentor was like, you need to stop editing. It's a good book. Put it out there. People need to see the content. Even if it's certain things are wrong, do it. You'll edit it later. So I went with my mentor's advice, and I'm actually going to put it out there, and I think it's ready to go. But the thing is, we have to work on the thing that we're insecure about the most to get immediate fulfillment to move on to the next thing. If you heard of the book called The Grit, Robert, have you, Angela Duckworth, have you read this book before?
What's it called? The Grit?
It's called Grit, Grit.
No, Grit, never heard of it.
So during my runs, I wake up around 5 o'clock in the morning. I do probably 2 to 3 hours of running, combination of weightlifting. So I try to do a lot of Spartan races as well. So only running doesn't really get me in shape for Spartan races, so I try to mix things up, at least to feel fulfilled in fitness myself. During those morning runs, I have a lot of time to listen to. I have a choice, either music or I can listen to podcasts or audiobooks. Well, one thing I learned by coming to America is, what you know is very dangerous in a good or a bad way. If you have a wrong belief system in something, you're going to dig a hole for yourself. If you have a good belief system towards something, you can actually climb up a ladder. And the more, it's like parenting, right? I learned all these valuable lessons and I put it into a book, and now I have a lot of good things to share with people. What is it exceptional that other people's books are not those things? And they truly are. If somebody mastered a certain skill set, they probably wrote a good book. So imagine if you read enough of those books, you're going to learn enough good things. And one thing that really keeps me sharp and updated, and also the leaders in my business are updated, I noticed the more of these good books and good information I expose myself to, the more of that I become. And I'm a big believer in we don't attract what we want in life, we attract what we are. For example, my staff. I've been negative before, but I'm a very, very positive guy. I'll probably say my friends would tell me I'm the most positive friend there is. Why? Because positivity takes practice, and a lot of it has to do with the information you're exposing yourself to. There was an interesting experiment done where there was 200 actors that went out in public, and 100 of the actors were carrying hot cup of coffee, and 100 of the actors were carrying cold cup of coffee. And they would walk up to random strangers, and they would say, "Excuse me, can you hold my cup of coffee? I'm going to tie my shoe real quick." And forcefully, they would make these strangers hold their coffee for like 10, 15 seconds. They would tie their shoe, thank them, grab the coffee, and leave. A very interesting observation. So the experiment was a lady with a clipboard would walk up to these 100 people and say, "Hey, I'm going to give you $20. I need you to read this short paragraph about a character. And I need you to describe to me how this character, what do you think about this character?" So they're like, agree. And the people that touched the hot cup of coffee 30 minutes before that clipboard approach said, "What a warm, kind, giving, caring character. I really like that person." And then the people that touched the cold cup of coffee, literally 86% of them said, "Well, what a cold, thoughtless, meaningless, negative character. I don't like this character." So there's the funny thing. A lot of our thoughts are not our thoughts. In the results of this experiment was many things, the way we feel, the way we are an outcome of what we could have been exposed to, like a cold or a hot cup of coffee 30 minutes ago. So often how we feel is how we line up our day. Our thoughts and decisions often have to do with our environment. So if you put yourself in an environment where you get negative, you have to change. And I noticed the more I was up in the morning, the more positive things I would listen to before I get to my office, the more good things I was exposed to, good music, good information, the kinder my approach was to my spouse and my friends. And I naturally learned how to make people feel good about themselves around me. And that attracted good people, not just towards my business, but like my spouse and my friends, good health, and etc. And I also think the same thing works in compound for negative. And there's a chapter in my book I talk about how the law of the compounding works is it's really hard to get back once you really get further into from okay to fair to good to great to extraordinary great. And often it goes backwards from okay to bad, from terrible to extraordinary terrible. And that's why I think a morning routine is very important for most people, especially people that I admire and I like. I just kind of didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so I approached them. A lot of them start their morning off with reading something positive. A lot of them start off with fitness. So I implemented morning fitness. That was the only thing that got me to be consistently positive. And with the fact that I was able to come into the office full of energy, I had some good information to share with my staff, and they all had, and the funny thing is I attracted what I am, not what I want, right? So all of them started waking up early. All of them got themselves smartwatches. All of them started tracking their results. And I can tell you how many of my team members actually ran marathons or half marathons or Spartan races with me. So, and often that caused other business owners to call me and say, "Hey, how do you find these positive, driven, coachable, and motivated team members?" And I said, "I really don't know." It's because when I bring them into my life, they either become that, or if they're uncomfortable around me, they get pushed away. So that's how I think who you are can push away the bad, and who you are can bring in the good. But as far as secret, Robert, there is no secret. It's good old-fashioned hard work. I mean, between writing the book and prepping for marathons and running my very fast-paced, busy business, I'm up 5 in the morning and I go to sleep at 12 o'clock. So I'm averaging between 4 to 6 hours of sleep. I know my doctor says it's terrible, but between that and often my kids were not sleeping the first couple of years from when they were born, I got very uncomfortable. And I realized I can either get comfortable being uncomfortable, or I can complain, get negative, and by end of the day, go to sleep, put my head on the pillow, realize I had a crappy day. So it's my own responsibility, and it's my own fault if I had a good or a bad day. It's nothing to do with anything else. Yes, me touching a cup of coffee might influence the way I feel, but I often shake it off. If I need to take a break, I go outside for a run. I go to the gym, but I realize you have to have some kind of an outlet with that as well. And my outlet is fitness. And that's the one way I get away from certain issues and problems as well.
That is super awesome. That if we're not careful, we can be on that downward spiral, and it's up to us to. I mean, we only have a limited amount of control of what comes to us, what influences us, but then we have that decision to assign meaning to it, right? If all this bad stuff has happened to us in the past, or the day or the week gets off to a bad start, that's something out of our control. But then it is within our control to set ourselves up for success, to have this morning routine as you've described, and to model those successful people who do a handful of things correctly, and that is responsible for their good outlook and them being motivated and inspiring to others. Versus you can look at those patterns, those repeat connections with people who don't take things seriously, who are in bad health, who are in bad finances, who have a bad mindset, and then we can know to stay away from those things. And what you're making me think of is like I sometimes help people set up their websites, or I sell plugins and things like that, and I come across the situation all the time where someone might set up a website and then they'll get it set up and super perfect, but then just because it's not taking off at the speed they want it to, or because the business isn't growing as fast as they want to, then they'll cut corners, they'll shut things down, they'll even close the website and then say, well, now things are really bad. I'm thinking, yeah, because you sabotage yourself, right? It's really easy and tempting and scary to self-sabotage yourself, which leads to more self-sabotage. And so instead we need to apply what you're talking about here to attract what we are, to push ourselves more, to be aware of this law of compounding. If we're just negative and things are getting worse and worse, they're going to continue to get worse and worse. But if we can make these incremental improvements, if we can better our best, if we can set and meet and hit goals, if we can expand our horizons and stretch ourselves, then we can experience this phenomenon of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and then keep on just doing what's right and putting in the hard work that you say, where nothing substitutes hard work. And we do need to make sometimes the sacrifices of temporarily putting one or two things to the side, so that way we can give these things the attention and dedication they deserve until that's built up, and then we can shift our focus to something else. And so yeah, this is all like great stuff for us to think about and chew on. And as we're beginning to wind down here, I want to kind of shift our attention back to this book. So I mean, clearly you've started from nothing, and a lot of people have these lucky breaks in life. It sounds like you really just went from 0 to 1,000 in a really short period of time and figured out a lot of things. And so yeah, it's been a really kind of inspiring story here. But then as far as the book, when it's out, hopefully it'll be out by the time this episode goes live. Where can people grab that book, and what kind of interesting nuggets are people going to get from it? Is it all like what we've been talking about here, or like what's kind of the outcome of this mind control book going to be?
So the book will be out shortly. It'll just be on Amazon and pretty much possibly every large bookstore. At least that's what my publishers promised me to get me. But if the book goes live within the next month or two, it'll be a digital version, audio version as well, probably within the next 60 days. It'll just be called Mind Control. And when I said 14 principles, Robert, the 14 principles of achieving the American dream, it talks about certain things like, for example, working smart versus working hard, or working smart and hard in one. Some people say hard work brings you results. It does. It's better than not working at all. But often recovery from failure is very painful. If you can avoid it, it's great. If you can plant seeds in a nice, good wet soil versus planting seeds in a desert, right? Which one will get better results? The lazy farmer in the forest will grow much better trees than a hardworking farmer in the desert, right? That's why in the book I talk about mentorship. What kind of mentors to look for, which ones to keep around. I have a chapter that talks about, all the negative kind of personalities, like the wet blanket, what to avoid from people, what kind of people not to ask advice from, what to do, which people to pull in. And there's, certain personality types like your, certain cheerleading type that might support your bad decisions. So you have to be very careful who you ask for advice and mentorship. So there's certain things that other people will not do for you. You have to get very good at seeking help and listening. Often people are too prideful. So I talk about pride. I talk about envy, anger, laziness. I have a chapter dedicated to the 7 deadly sins that talks about certain things that we do. It's like a poison to our mind that we don't necessarily notice right away, but we need to. There's a chapter dedicated to just fitness only, chapter dedicated to just friendship, and one chapter I talk about disability. When you help too much, specifically helping family members or your staff or helping out other people, you're making them dependent upon you. So you have to be very aware. Too much help is actually dangerous. So you have to be very good at teaching people how to fish, but not handing them the fish. So multiple lessons throughout my life, Robert. And again, it's not a lot of it. I wouldn't say it's even my information, stuff that I'll learn along the way. But my journey from birth to now has always been learning and developing and getting better. But I've also, one thing I think I've never lost, and I'm proud of it, is I've always been a student of the game. I never wanted to stop learning, and I'm never too good for advice. So a lot of those things are in the book. And again, it's 250 pages. It's a lot of content. And I think it's a very unique approach to a book, because some books focus on one thing. My book has a lot of short, simple analogies and definitions, and it goes, A through Z real quick.
Awesome. I love it. So it sounds like everything that we need to get refocused, unstuck, become the best person, all of that, all in one book. And what I'm hearing from a lot of what you've put in there is, like you said, there are the life lessons, some things from yourself, some things that you've absorbed from other sources. But it sounds like if we're not careful, we might end up on that wrong path, right? If we let the bad thoughts control us, if we let those incorrect mentors take us on the wrong path. Like you said, like there might be that cheerleader personality type who is excited and agrees with everything you say, but then won't tell you the harsh truth when those sorts of things happen. And if we're not aware of just a few of these pitfalls, we might end up with a lot of wasted time. So we really need to get this book, Mind Control, on Amazon. So go on Amazon, search for Mind Control, and then when you see the one that's written by Hayk, and you can spell his first name Hayk, then you'll know you found the right one. And is there any other easy way for people to get in touch with you? Any like website or email sign up form they can find of yours?
I'm going to get all this set up shortly, within the next probably 30 to 60 days. But for now, just my first name, last name at iCloud.com will be the best way to get a hold of me. That's my direct side email I have. I try to keep it separate from my business one that I get 150 to 200 emails a day. So just first name, Hayk Tadevosyan, Tadevosyan at iCloud.com. And then I will have more of a website that's being built and other ways to contact me as well. So that's where we stand right now, Robert. I don't have an official site yet, but it's in the works.
All right, well, fair enough. Well, people can at least, by the time this is out, find your book, and you spelled out your name, and we'll have your name and that address in the show notes. So if people are dedicated enough, then they'll find a way to reach out for you. So Hayk Tadevosyan, and the book is Mind Control. And as we're about to wrap things up, Hayk, out of all the, you're full of these like stories and lessons, and your book has a lot of this stuff packed in. And of all the things you've gone through and the information you've learned, would you say, is there like a number one just like principle or life lesson, or just number one thing that's been the most helpful for you in life?
There's a quote I reference in my book a lot, and I'll leave it with this quote. To live in the future is to be in fear, and to live in the past is to live in regret. To be happy is to be in the moment. And 90% of what we fear never happens, and we can never change the past. So if anything out there, if there's one thing I could share that's a lesson for you in the audience of your podcast, Robert, is be present. It's too easy for us to let our mind wander towards things that we do not control.
Very good advice, and a harsh reminder for some of us, and maybe we need to remind ourselves of that again and again, because that is so important, to be present, to be in the moment, and not let the failure or the stress or the what if or the worries or the what happens take over. What's the most important is right now, what we're doing, what we're living. And so very good advice, very good lesson and reminder there. So make sure that you go on Amazon and find that book, Mind Control. You're going to flip through it. You're going to love it. It's going to change your life in whatever age you are, whatever location you are, wherever you are in that life journey, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're on your 50th business or your first business, if you have 20 kids or 0 kids, if you're a man, woman, whatever, this is going to be full of things that will help to get you unstuck, refocused, where you need to go. So go ahead and grab that book, Mind Control, on Amazon. You'll be glad you did. And thanks, Hayk, for stopping by and for being personal and honest with us and dumping a ton of helpful knowledge on us. And I really appreciate you. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robert. Pleasure being on your show, and have a great rest of the day.
Do you want a podcast like this one? Well, what's been holding you back? What if it was easy and you had someone to help you get it going? Check out doneforyoupodcasting.com, where we'll handle some or all of your podcast setup, production, marketing, and more. See you soon at doneforyoupodcasting.com.